What a beautiful reminder of why we're gathered here today. Many of us have different ways of showing reverence by applying our own skills and knowledge to the mission of ocean protection. But one particular action is necessary, a necessary step towards solidifying true respect for the ocean. Rights for the ocean itself. Our human society provides a plethora of inalienable rights to individuals and communities, but there is still much work to be done in this arena when it comes to nature and the ocean. Here to explain a bit more about the fundamentals of nature's rights and Earth jurisprudence, Mumta Ito is joining us. Mumta is the founder of NGO Nature's Rights and a leading expert and advocate for the rights of nature. Greetings, Mumta. We're so thrilled to have you here.
Hi, it's really a pleasure to be here today, Danny. Thank you.
Yes, so Mumta, what are the rights of nature and how can they transform society?
So the rights of nature are the idea that if a corporation can have legal personality and rights, why not an ecosystem? But it's so much more than just that. It's about using law as a vehicle for societal transformation and re-establishing ourselves in the web of life as a regenerative and a healing presence on the planet. The rights of nature actually form the fundamental basis of our own human right to life, from which all of our other rights and freedoms emanate. Yet, we don't even acknowledge it in our legal system. And this is why we have the problem. If we look at our current society as an iceberg, we see only what is visible above the waterline, all the interrelated crises. But what we don't see are the invisible structures and systems, the paradigms of thought and consciousness that generate these results on autopilot. What happens below the waterline is a degenerative cycle based on separation consciousness that leads to a mechanistic paradigm and fragmented systems that work in isolation to each other, like you pointed out earlier. At present, the law doesn't recognize a relationship between us and the rest of nature, yet it's our most fundamental relationship. In law, nature is treated as objects, property, and resources rather than the source of life. And this is what actually makes it legal to have an economic system based on infinite growth, an agricultural system that poisons the earth and getting our energy in ways that deplete nature faster than she can replenish. All our societal solutions, however, act on the top level, the tip of the iceberg, on crisis management. But to get a lasting solution, we must also act on the lower levels of the iceberg. And for that, we need the law. We need the law to be on our side. Instead of legalizing and institutionalizing harm, which is what is happening at the moment, law has to scale up regenerative solutions. And it must also protect life over interests, which is what we do with nature's rights. We change the paradigm, we transform the system, and most importantly, embody the change. So we start with unity consciousness, with the human being part of nature, embedded in the radically interconnected web of life, which leads to a holistic paradigm, whole system structures, which give very different results. When embedded at all levels of law and across all policy areas, an earth-centered, relational, and ecological approach to lawmaking scales up regenerative results on autopilot. Nature's rights reorientates the whole of society to pull in the same direction, bringing lasting systemic change.
Thank you, Mumta. And before we move on to our panel, can you just briefly talk about how this is different from environmental law?
Sure. So environmental law operates in isolation to the other major laws and policies that affect nature, like the laws affecting economy, agriculture, energy, and so on. It acts at the periphery to manage the externalities, the worst effects of a destructive system, whilst leaving the system itself intact. Nature's rights, on the other hand, is about fundamental rights. So it works at all levels of law across all the key policy sectors that impact nature to address the root causes of destruction and to drive systemic change. Also, another point to note is that environmental law is human-centered and it takes a reductionist approach to complex adaptive systems like nature and human societies, which don't behave in a linear or a quantifiable manner. So with nature's rights, we take a relational, an ecosystemic, and a precautionary approach to deal with complexity in an increasingly unpredictable and uncertain world. And in this way, I feel that nature's rights is the next evolutionary step in environmental law. And it is something that will unite and will strengthen all of the other initiatives to protect nature.
That's a brilliant explanation, Mumta. Thank you for that. So, to build further context for our upcoming panel discussion, let's take a look at a case study happening now in Spain and how understanding ecocide can help elevate the rights of nature onto the global stage.
To recognize the crime of ecocide as one main purpose is really to prevent further damages and restore the ecological balances that we destroyed. We don't look after the idea of putting person in jail. What we want is to have a legal frame which explains that some industrial activities today should be banned if we really want not to cross the planetary boundaries, if we really want to protect nature on the long term. And so the crime of ecocide is really the crime which is missing in international law today to regulate all the activities and to oblige the corporates and the states to disinvest in fossil fuels, to stop, for example, in the ocean, industrial fishing, to stop mining everywhere without any due diligence. We really need today to ask the states to protect the ecosystems where they have an impact.
Pues mira, el Mar Menor es la mayor laguna salada del Mediterráneo. La riqueza y el valor ecológico de esta laguna hace que goce de figuras de protección, de figuras legales de protección, tanto en el ámbito nacional como europeo e internacional. A pesar de todo esto, el Mar Menor ha estado sufriendo una crisis ecológica que lo ha colocado al borde del colapso. Esta gran crisis se debe a un modelo de desarrollo desde los años 70 que no ha tenido en cuenta las leyes naturales de la laguna y las necesidades ecológicas de la laguna. Por ejemplo, toda la basura de la minería cargada de metales pesados, un desarrollo urbanístico salvaje alrededor de la laguna y en sus riberas, un modelo intensivo e industrial de agricultura que contiene nitratos en las sustancias agroquímicas.
My hope is that the crime of ecocide will permit to recognize a legal statute to the commons, the natural commons, and specifically the oceans, the high seas. Why? Because the high seas are not under the sovereignty of any states, but are exploitable by everyone.
Si el Mar Menor consigue derechos, el Mar Menor será respetado teniendo en cuenta su propia estructura interna, su propia funcionalidad y sus necesidades ecológicas. Esto significa que la vida del Mar Menor tendrá derechos en las mismas condiciones que tiene derechos la vida ficticia de las entidades mercantiles y las corporaciones y de las personas que somos los principales agentes contaminantes de esta entidad natural. Lo cual significa que reconocemos la verdad ecológica de que la naturaleza no pertenece al ser humano, sino que el ser humano es una especie más que pertenece a la naturaleza. Por tanto, es un avance en igualdad, es un avance en paz y es un avance en una vida en armonía con el medio natural.
The crime of ecocide, if it is recognized, will permit to sue states or corporates when they commit ecocide within high seas. More media, more politicians, more parliamentarians, and even the Pope now request to recognize the crime of ecocide. So I believe that this crime will be recognized in the next decade.
These interesting initiatives make you wonder how approaching ocean protection from a different perspective and framework might actually work. Here to discuss more on this, Mumta and I are joined by Cillian Lohan, Vice President in charge of communication in the European Economic and Social Committee, and Marie Toussaint, a Green member of the European Parliament. Welcome to you all.
Hello.
Thank you.
Cillian, I might start with you. Why were the European Economic and Social Committee interested in undertaking the study on the fundamental rights of the Nature Charter for the EU?
Sure. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for having me here today. Well, firstly, the boring bit to explain what the European Economic and Social Committee is. It's one of the EU institutions, and we're made up of representatives of civil society organisation. So our role is to give the perspective of civil society to the legislators at an EU level. So effectively, we respond to proposed laws and say where the proposals could be improved. And one area of interest that I worked on was on the subject of climate justice. That's what led me to work on the nature's rights issue, because I wrote there about what we mean by justice or fairness in terms of climate action. And quickly we got to the point that within our societies, we have a means of ensuring fairness that is our justice system, as Mumta has just described. And it's part of our systems, part of our societal structures. And in that system, we give recognition and legal personality to people and to corporations. Now, looking at this in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals and our Sustainable Development commitments, we have three distinct elements to that, which require balance, namely the people or the social element. Then we have the economy and the business element. And both of these, as I've said, are recognized within our judicial system. But there's a third element, the environment or nature, which is not recognized, at least not to the extent that we want it to be. Therefore, it was a very pragmatic approach to propose that it's essential to ensure fairness and justice, that we need to give recognition in terms of rights and legal personality to nature. Indeed, my feeling is that there's a certain irrationality in having systems that undermine nature, because we have a society and communities completely locked in with the economy. If you have economic problems, you have social problems. And the economic systems are primarily linear, based on extraction of raw materials from nature, powered primarily by energy sourced from nature, a model that has led us to the current crisis of climate and biodiversity, both of which are on the brink of collapse, not to overstate the problem. So this logically led me to want to commission a study, as you asked, on a Charter of Fundamental Rights for Nature, to try and achieve balance for consistency with Sustainable Development Goals, for fairness and for justice. And we were very lucky to have somebody like Mumta to take a leadership role in developing this kind of study. And let me just say that approaching the rights-based approach, for me, is a very practical way to achieve systemic change. We talk about it a lot, but then when we get down to the practicalities of what needs to happen, I think changing the systems and creating systemic change by establishing a new set of rights is something that can really deliver the change that we so desperately and urgently need.
I couldn't agree more, Cillian. Thank you for that. And if anyone's interested in knowing more about the Fundamental Rights of Nature Charter study, you can check out the link in the chat box. And you can also join Mumta and colleagues in Action Lab 1 very soon to learn more. So going back to you, Mumta, what does the EESC study propose, and how does it support other existing EU initiatives?
Okay, so in the study, we propose something new. A rights-based, whole systems overarching legal framework to unify and create coherence between the different policies, laws, and initiatives, which, as you mentioned before, are currently in a state of fragmentation and work in isolation to each other. So central to our proposal is a reframing of the notion of rights and how they are held and enforced in society, as we can see in this diagram and along the lines that Cillian already mentioned. So if we look at the diagram on the left, the three circles model of sustainability, our current sustainability model, where we have people, we have economy, and we have nature. But we have them as interlocking circles. So there's an assumption that they can operate independently of each other. But in reality, what we have in life is a bit closer to the model in the middle, which are the three concentric circles, because the only circle that can operate independently of the others is nature, because there is no economy without a human society, and there is no human society without nature. So what we have is a natural systemic order, a natural hierarchy of systems. And if we are to map on that a rights-based framework, as we can see in the current sustainability model, we have human rights, we have economic rights, but human rights are not enforceable against corporations, and nature's rights are not even in the picture. So if we were to come back to the middle model, we have nature's rights, we have human rights, and we have economic rights in a synergistic, relational, and ecosystemic relation to each other. So you wouldn't have a corporate right that would undermine a human right, because it would be unraveling the very system from which it derives. And you wouldn't have a human right or a corporate right that would work against nature's rights, because again, you're unraveling the source. It's irrational. And so the model on the right, if we are to map on these three circles, we make them three-dimensional. We add a fourth circle at the bottom representing the planetary boundaries. And we map the UN Sustainable Development Goals on the top three circles corresponding to economy, to human society, and to nature. What we have here is the integration of these well-known indicators that we already have, along with a rights-based framework for enforcement, where nature's rights includes, or it has embedded within it, human rights, and that has embedded within it economic rights, all acting synergistically to support each other. So currently, there is no legal framework to enforce sustainability or the planetary boundaries or the Sustainable Development Goals. So what we're proposing in the Charter is an actual legal framework to enforce all of this.
Thank you, Mumta. And yeah, speaking of legal frameworks, I'd like to move on to Marie. So, how can nature's rights be brought into the EU legal framework, and how can these rights help deliver the Green Deal?
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks also to Mumta and Cillian. I think this is really important what you achieved. And as we are talking here about oceans with all these beautiful images and this breathing exercise that you made us doing, I really do think that it's time that we think over what are the legal statuses of these global commons, natural global commons, and think over what do they need. And they have the right at least to regenerate and to be respected. And I think that this is something that we must understand, especially since we damage so much the oceans. So it's time that we take this page on. And of course, this is possible. This is possible in many ways. In the study presented by Mumta and Cillian on the European Charter of Fundamental Rights of Nature, we already have a few different options. We have the option of incorporating the Charter in the EU treaty. We have one article for that, the Article 48 on the Treaty of Functionment of the European Union. But we can also have something, aside, a charter as an interinstitutional non-legislative act by the Council, the Parliament, and the Commission. Sometimes we pretend that we cannot do things, but we have actually some ways if there is a political will, and in that matter, the political will to protect the living and the ocean. But we can push for the rights of nature in many different other ways, because we can also have a large-scale legal reform that would integrate in all environmental European texts the rights of nature approach and its vocabulary. So it can be done within the directive on environmental impact assessments, for instance. It can be done on the directive on environmental liability or on the directives related to access to justice. We can work towards the right of nature in many different ways and have a political umbrella like the Green Deal is. The Green Deal is about changing 50 different pieces of legislation to reach our environmental goals. We could have the same with the rights of nature umbrella, which would, lead us to change all the different laws. Or we could also have something that I'm promoting for a few years now, which would be an environmental treaty, because we have a treaty on the functionment of the European Union. We have human charters, European Convention on Human Rights, but we don't have any environmental treaty. And this is also one of the initiatives that we could push for. But of course, for that, we need to reach out political majority. And this is something that we still need to work on. But I do believe that things are changing a lot, because we are calling now in the European Parliament for the recognition of the intrinsic value of the ecosystems and for granting a legal status to the ancient and primary forests. So one day we can do it also for the oceans and for the rest of the ecosystems.
Now, Marie, you work with Valerie, who was in the video we just watched. What progress is being made on ecocide in Parliament?
Well, this is a good question. Thanks for asking it, because we are making a huge progress towards the recognition of ecocide. We are making this progress throughout the world. I just want to point that out. I launched last October an international alliance of parliamentarians for the recognition of ecocide, and we are growing more and more numerous. So if there are some members of parliament here who want to join us, please reach out to me. It's moving in Brazil, in Bolivia, in Mexico, in different countries of the EU. So we don't have time to dig, but it's really interesting to see how things are moving now. In the European Parliament, we have also reached a few successes that are really valuable. First of all, the European Parliament called in January for the recognition of ecocide at the international level, so within the International Criminal Court, in a text dedicated to human rights. Last week, the European Parliament called again for the recognition of ecocide as an international crime in the context of the fight against biodiversity. And maybe someday we will also call for the recognition of ecocide in the context of the fight against climate change. What we see is that when we're talking about human rights or natural rights, as Mumta pointed out before, we are working towards the rights of nature and towards the condemnation of ecocide. But we also move towards the recognition of ecocide in the EU law, inside of the EU, and not only at international level. So in April, we were working on the environmental liability of companies. And in this text, we are asking for studying the recognition of ecocide within EU law, within the EU territory. And we can do it, and we have an opportunity, because in the end of the year and the beginning of 2022, we will revise the directive of 2008 on the protection of the environment through penal law. And this is a place where we can push for the recognition of ecocide and compel the member states to write the crime of ecocide into their own laws. I have to say as well that, of course, penal law is a lot related to national law. It's really the sovereignty considered today as the sovereignty of the member states, which is a problem when we talk about natural global commons, right? Because this concerns us all. But things are also moving inside of the countries. We are working at the moment in Sweden, in France, in Spain, in the Netherlands, all places where we could have ecocide at some point. But things are more advanced even in Belgium, because Belgium was the first EU country to support the recognition of ecocide at the International Criminal Court level, and also is currently working on the inscription of ecocide in its own law. And if we move all together in the same direction, then we will manage to get ecocide into the law more quickly than we would have thought a few years ago.
Well, Marie, let's bring the commissioner back into the discussion to understand the EU's position on nature-based rights and any plans for the future. So, Commissioner, previously we spoke of Mission Starfish, revamping ocean governance. What do you think of the whole systems approach of the nature framework? Rights of nature framework.
Yes, so I think a good example is our initiative on combating deforestation. A trade-based approach can be faster than developing new category of crime. But the fact is that we need effective tools and effective enforcement to protect nature, and certainly both tracks has to not to exclude each other. And of course, utmost importance here comes in access to justice. And therefore very important citizens and NGOs participation and of course their rights to bring legal challenges, including to protect nature. And I think this is a best way to guarantee the rights of people to obtain information, to actively participate in decision making, and of course take legal actions.
Thank you, Commissioner. So do any of our panelists have a question for the Commissioner? Marie, I believe you had one.
Yeah, if I can. And hello, Mr. Commissioner. Well, we have already met a few times and discussed about the rights of nature idea and concept. But as you just saw, we have here different studies, especially the one from the EESC and different other leads to recognize the rights of nature. I don't know if one of these leads impacts you more, and if you think that one of them could be interesting, and how could the Commission engage in such an initiative?
I think, as you know, Commission is always open to discuss and look what could be angles of engagement, and where we could begin. As you know, Commission has a right of initiative, and we always eager to give people more rights, to give, of course, NGOs their rights of having a chance of legally defending nature, because nature cannot defend themselves, and I think access to justice is a crucial.
Yes, access to justice is crucial. I want to say thank you to all of you for your input and contributions today. It's great to see this work being undertaken and energizing movement behind all of it. So how can we help influence a more robust protection of the ocean by giving it the rights it deserves? Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Danny. Bye-bye.
Danny.
Goodbye, thank you. Exciting day with the race arriving and finishing up very soon in Genoa. Now we'll hear from their mayor about upcoming commitments to a healthier ocean.
We are particularly excited to host here the arrival, the last leg of the Ocean Race Europe. And in 2 years from now, in 2023, we will host also the last leg, the grand finale of the All Around the World Regatta. Those two events are really important for us, together with the message that the Ocean Race is sending to the world. We need to respect the ocean, we need to protect the ocean, and we need to leave the ocean better than what we found. That's exactly our mission. And we, as a city of Genoa, are particularly committed to that, and we would like to step forward and to show everybody what we can do, what we are doing, and what we'll do in the future. First point, we are committed to increase the number of blue flags. As you know, in Italy, the blue flags are particularly significant because they include an area where the seawater is particularly clean and very well protected. Today, Liguria and Genoa got the highest number in Italy, and Italy got the highest number in the Mediterranean area. So we would like to continue to do that and having even more blue flags in our area. Second point, we are fully committed in 2025 to have the full city of Genoa with public transportation without emitting CO2 anymore. So green energy, fully renewable, that will be a big step, and we are fully committed. We are on the range to achieve the goal in 2025. And third, and this is really something that will put Genoa at the head of any other harbor in the world, we are fully committed in having Genoa as the first harbor that will be completely sustainable from the environmental standpoint. So all the energy in the harbor will be green, will be without any CO2 emission, and will be fully renewable. We are working on that. We are working also with the help of the European programs, and we are committed to do that in the next few years up to 2026. That will be a great achievement and a demonstration to everybody that we are not only involved in the program, but we are fully committed.